Salutations, everyone! Welcome back to another Total Warhammer 3 guide. I'm Lord Forward, and today we're going to be talking about 10 tips on how to play the Greenskins better. Tip 1. The Greenskins have a cyclical gameplay style in the campaign map, by which I mean the Greenskins' ability to expand and defend to a large degree revolves around their reputation and wogs. When you get a wog, you're capable of massive, fast, powerful expansion. But once you lose wog, you will suffer quite a few penalties for a few turns to rebuild your reputation. So it's not uncommon for Greenskins to expand rapidly when they have a wog and then struggle to defend until they rebuild. So for new, beginning, and even intermediate players, you have to get in the mindset of you're going to have peaks of really powerful gameplay where you can conquer most anybody in the game, and then you're going to have these very deep valleys where you're rather weak and can easily be invaded. However, if you play correctly through ambushing, raiding, and playing slightly more defensive after a wog, you can very quickly rebuild to start the path to your wog and overcome that weakness. It's something you definitely want to think about if you start playing at higher level difficulties and stuff, because although the Greenskins are strong, they do need wogs to start to break some of the more powerful late game armies and factions. Tip 2, and if you're not already doing this, this might change your gameplay the most. Use the Greenskin artillery. The Greenskins have access to 2 major artillery units, rock lobbers, which are pretty good for the cost and maintenance and how early you get them. But moving on further, they have access to the very lovely Doom Diver catapults, which don't look amazingly better than the rock lobbers, except for the fact they are guided projectiles, meaning if you fight the battle yourself, you can fly them kind of yourself and be very accurate, or you can just rely on the fact that the AI catapults are going to be far more accurate than most other factions' artillery. In fact, I've found great success using Doom Diver catapults to snipe enemy artillery or even mages from a long distance. Plus, they're armor penetrating and they've got good range. So overall, bring 1 or 2 of them to every battle, use them to smash or weaken enemy formations, take out artillery, powerful mages or ranged, before charging in with your very heavy melee faction. Tip 3. Black orcs are amazing late game infantry units, but you must beware armor penetration. It's not uncommon for a lot of players to use black orcs late game because they're one of your best infantry units, but then suddenly struggle when they go up against factions like the Dark Elves, Khorne factions, or others that have easy access to powerful armor penetration units. So rely on black orcs. They're amazing units, but beware that they do get significantly weaker if the enemy has armor penetration. If we look at one of their stats here, you'll see they have 110 armor, which is ridiculous. Their armor penetrating mean they excel against other late game units. But outside of the actual armor, their combat stats are, they're not bad, but they are certainly lacking compared to some of the other factions' late game units. So just be aware that black orcs are great, but if you fight an army with armor penetration, you may have to adapt your strategy to take the armor penetration into account and the fact that your black orcs are going to die much faster than you would expect. Tip 4. Some of the Greenskin lords are pretty close to one-man armies, especially Grimgor Ironhide, who might be in the top 5 most powerful lords in game. He's a monster. But if you look at their other lords, you've got 3 shamans or mages, so we're not going to count them in this. War bosses, they can be very powerful at assassinating enemy units and not dying, but the big powerhouses are these orc war bosses. They start off with 70 armor, great melee attack, and melee defense. You take them, they can, once leveled up, pretty much be one-man armies. I would wager the Greenskins have... they're definitely in the top 3 in terms of combat ability on their lords. There's very few factions that are going to be able to recruit as powerful lords straight out from the beginning, and some of the heroes are right up there as well, but the lords bear special mention. Build them, use them, don't be afraid to throw them into combat. They last a lot longer than you'd expect, as long as the enemy doesn't have armor penetration. Okay, tip 5. Fanatics with their special can do massive damage. Now, this is one that a lot of people know, but for those of you who do not know it, you do need to be aware of this. If you look at the Night Goblin Fanatic version, they have this special ranged weapon, which is an activatable ability. Spinning Looms, it's a vortex, does pretty good damage. It's been weakened. It's still strong and worth mentioning. Basically, it's a vortex, sort of like a spell. You can cast it, throw it forward, armor penetrating. You throw it on unarmed or even slightly armored mobs, and they will die really fast. Fanatics can do significantly higher damage than you would imagine in combat. It's quite possible to get like 70 or 80 kills with a good use of their weapon. That's down from where it was, but if you don't use Fanatics with specials, you really want to start thinking about doing it. And if you're playing against Greenskins in multiplayer, be aware that good Greenskin players tend to bring Fanatics just for that ability. It can really wreck your lines if used properly. Tip 6. Greenskin monsters are very, very strong, but they do need support so they don't get surrounded and run out of morale and rout. So if we look at some of the Greenskin monsters here, special mention, of course, to the giant spiders, the Arachnok spiders, which are very powerful, as well as the rogue idols. Rogue idols are an exception because they are unbreakable, but a lot of these other ones, yes, the leadership is 65. Some of them have better, but by and large, you're going to see a lot in the 45 range. If we look up here at our goblins and stuff, they're around 45 as well. On the other hand, goblin orc units tend to be fighting in formations with other units around them, whereas it's quite possible the monster outlasts the infantry they're sent in with, meaning they sometimes have about half their hit points and then they rout because they've run out of leadership. So just be aware that if you're going to use monsters, you want to make sure that they keep you keep support units around them so that they don't rout as much. It's actually not a bad idea to put them near your lords because they can make up for the lords can make up from some of their morale problems with red line leadership, but also having two massively powerful killing machines in close vicinity, assuming you're using orc war bosses, can really wreck enemy lines while keeping both units somewhat happy because there's other units nearby. But definitely use monster units. Just be aware that some of the greenskin units have lower leadership than you would expect on monsters, and it's not uncommon to see them rout. Tip 7. Goblin units are expendable. They should be used to fill out armies. Don't expect your goblins, unless you're paying Grom the Paunch, to actually be amazing combatants. Their combat stats are not that great, but the big benefit they bring, they're expendable, so if they rout your orc units, by and large, and your monsters, won't care that much. Now, the reason they should be used to fill out armies rather than can be used to fill out armies is if you remember the WOG mechanic, where every unit in a greenskin army is basically doubled. So if you've got 20 units, the WOG army will be 20. If you've got 10 units in the army, the WOG reinforcing army should be about 10. Unless they've suddenly changed this since I last looked, which I don't think they have because I played them a week ago. You want to have full WOG armies to get the biggest benefit of your WOGs. So use goblins. They're cheap, they're easy, the maintenance costs are atrociously low, 75. It's significantly lower than most of your other units. Comparison with an orc, which is the base orc is 107. That's 35 cheaper. It's worth throwing them in there. Special mention, goblin archers are actually decent. So if you don't want to use these main ones, definitely use goblin archers, although their maintenance cost is higher. Just fill out your armies to get the WOGs. Every unit on the battlefield is another unit that can get kills. Goblin units have decent morale for an expendable unit. 55. Well, in this case, it's because of Grimgor, among other things. But they're less likely to rout than other factions' expendable units, which means you should use them. Plus, they're shielded, which is always nice for expendable units. Tip 8. The Greenskins have strong cavalry units. You should use them for flanking and mobility. The Greenskins, and a way that surprised me when I started playing Total Warhammer 1, is that the Greenskins actually have a deep line of cavalry, including chariots and stuff. They are very powerful. Their stats don't look the world's most amazing, but they have very high charge bonuses. The maintenance cost for them is not outrageous, but overall, they are a very nice complement to your very powerful melee units. Unlike a faction with Bretonia, which has really great cav, terrible infantry. Greenskins have really great infantry and pretty decent cav. They're probably like 4th or 5th in ranking cavalry in the game. And it's worth mentioning because since they have a strong infantry presence, they're particularly vulnerable to flanks. So having cav of your own that can actually hold off flanks and do decent damage as well is really worth it. Some of these stats don't look amazing, but if you look at like the savage ones, you got to remember they have physical resistance. So they are a lot better than they might appear. And these boar ones, their stats are a little bit misleading. They're really quite good. They're armor penetrating on a good portion of their cav units, which makes a big difference fighting late game factions that are heavily armored. So use their cav units. It's quite possible for you to be mainly focusing on infantry, artillery, and range. But if you're neglecting the cav, you're neglecting a surprisingly strong part of the Greenskin faction. Tip 9. And this is a reoccurring one between my guides. Each lord plays very differently, especially for the Greenskins, and it bears special mention compared to other factions. So you've got people like Grimgor Ironhide who upgraded, give them the Sword of Cain. They will become one-man armies. It's not uncommon for players to go up against Grimgor and lose because he solos like 500 of your troops. But other factions like Grom the Paunch specialize in goblin units, turning what is one of the weakest units in the Greenskin rosters into absolute powerhouses capable of fighting on par with orcs, despite having a very low maintenance cost. Other Greenskins, if you play Skarsnik in particular, he's all about racing to Karak 8 Peaks. He does not do well with orc units. In fact, he can't get some orc units until late game, so he has to rely on goblins, meaning his gameplay shifts a lot towards ambushes, surprise, flanks, other stuff. So just be aware each lord plays very differently. It's quite hard to port your skills with one Greenskin lord to another. Going from Grimgor to Grom is a huge shock because you have a lord that can't fight amazingly in battle, but units are a lot better. Or Skarsnik, which completely loses access to a huge portion of your roster for most of the game. So learn your lord, learn what they can and what they can't do. Read the descriptions. I can hardly say read the descriptions enough. The game creators did a great job explaining the strengths of units in their descriptions and how they play and stuff. So read those, use them, have fun making Grimgor a one-man army. If you have not done it, do it. It is hilarious to absolutely wreck armies with him. Just be aware of armor penetration. Tip 10. The Greenskins have a good economy. It's not unbelievable, but they rely heavily on loot and raids to make money for upgrades. Their basic industry unit pays for itself basically in one turn, which is amazing. And even late game, it pays for itself in 2 to 3 turns. However, Greenskin units towards the end can be very expensive. There are some infantry and cav units that is like 200 or 300 gold to maintain, meaning this will not allow you to build a super powerful army on its own. Sadly, the Greenskins lack really any other economic buildings whatsoever. However, and this is the point that if you're not using, you will want to remember, they have access to this very nice building called raiding stashes. First off, allows your armies to march further, but faction-wide, you get more money from post-battle loots, and you get more income from raiding, and you get more money from sacking and looting. Plus, you get some ambush chance in your province, which is nice for defense. Basically, this is telling you, you want to throw this down pretty much wherever you can in your lands, and then devote yourself to winning battles. If you can win a battle, you can make insane amount of money. If you've got like 7 or 8 of these, that's an additional 20 or 30 post-income loot. You sack something like Altdorf or Drakenhof when it's fully upgraded, and you'll pretty much have enough money for the rest of the game. It is nuts. It is the true strength of the Greenskins, is that if you're winning battles and looting, their economy is crazy. If you're not building these, well, they still have a good economy, don't get me wrong, and they still get good money from post-battle loot, but you're neglecting the true strength, which is played properly, and so long as they're winning, they can easily be the richest and most powerful faction. The downside is if you start losing, you struggle a bit. Cyclical gameplay, everyone, remember that. Anyway, that will be it for this guide. Hopefully this helps you. Some tips, a little bit more battle-oriented than some of the other factions, because the Greenskins are relatively simple to play in a straightforward manner. Don't forget underways, but otherwise, Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, put down your own tips. I'm sure dedicated Greenskin players might have some more. I didn't talk about the scrap mechanic. That would be part of my larger guide, so check that out if you haven't. And I'll see you guys all in another guide or let's play. Bye for now.